As a bird photographer, I see beginners making 7 common mistakes that ruin 80% of their photos. Because let's be honest, even with the powerful cameras we have today, there's still a few easy mistakes that can ruin our photos. And in this video, I'll show you what these mistakes are and how you can avoid them. And stay till the end for a bonus tip on what might be one of the most important things to do for getting great photos. Let's get started. Hey there everyone, welcome back, and if you're new to the channel, my name's Rob and I appreciate your checking out this video. Okay, so what are these 7 common mistakes made by beginners? Here's a quick reference of the topics we'll cover in this video. Let's dive right in with mistake number 1, autofocus. The first common mistake is not customizing your camera's autofocus settings. Modern cameras have incredibly advanced subject tracking systems, especially with features like animal eye detection. But relying on the default settings means you're not getting the most out of that technology. For instance, on my Canon R5 Mark II, I always enable animal eye detect. Most major brands like Sony, Nikon, and OM systems offer similar options for tracking wildlife subjects, so make sure to turn that one on. You'll also want to fine-tune your autofocus behavior to handle fast, unpredictable movement. Birds move quickly, so use settings that help your camera stay locked onto the subject. On my R5 Mark II, for example, I set tracking sensitivity to -2 and XL decel tracking to +2 for best results. If you're unsure where to start, YouTube is full of great tutorials specific to your camera model, but for now, stick with me, we've got more tips and solutions to go over. Next mistake, shutter speed. If your shutter speed's too slow, even slight camera movement can cause your subject to look blurry from camera shake. Slower shutter speeds like 1/50th of a second allow the sensor to gather more light over a longer exposure. The downside to this slower shutter speed is that any movement, either from you or your subject, can make the photo appear out of focus. By contrast, faster shutter speeds such as 1/1000th of a second or higher shorten the exposure time. This captures less light but greatly reduces the chance of motion blur or camera shake. When photographing fast-moving subjects like birds in flight, aim for a shutter speed around 1/3200th of a second or faster to freeze the action. For slower or stationary birds, such as this great blue heron perched on a branch, you can lower the shutter speed since there's minimal movement. So in short, match your shutter speed to your subject's motion. Use faster speeds to capture crisp action on fast-moving birds, and if you need to slow it down for more light, consider stabilizing your camera with a tripod. And next up is exposure. Beginners often rely solely on auto exposure mode, which can often result in overexposed or underexposed shots. This causes you to lose detail either in the highlights or in the shadows. One of the most common issues is trusting the camera's meter too much, especially when shooting subjects like birds against bright skies or strong backlight. In those situations, the camera often exposes for the background, turning your subject into a silhouette. Now this right here is an extreme example, but it illustrates my point. To avoid any loss of detail in the bird, I usually judge the exposure by eye, focusing on the bird, then adjusting the ISO and shutter speed manually until the bird is about 1 stop underexposed. This helps balance the exposure between the bright sky and darker foreground elements without pushing the ISO too high. And I don't use exposure compensation much these days because shooting in RAW provides a high dynamic range to work with when processing photos later. And no matter what, I recommend shooting in RAW. It gives you the most flexibility for recovering details and fine-tuning your image in post-processing. Another mistake beginners make is with composition. Beginners often center their subjects instead of applying the rule of thirds, which can make photos look flat or static. Another common issue is overlooking the background, leading to distracting elements like a branch or a pole appearing to stick out of the bird's head, like in this example. To avoid these unwanted distractions, always scan the entire frame and adjust your position as needed to create a balanced composition. In many cases, using a wider aperture or simply changing your shooting angle can blur or remove distractions before taking the shot. When capturing wide-angle scenes that include both the subject and surroundings, remember that lighting and composition can be trickier to manage than close-up frame-filling shots. And next we have white balance. Many beginners rely on auto white balance, and while that's not always a bad choice, it can sometimes cause unwanted color cast in certain natural lighting conditions. For example, during golden hour, auto white balance often compensates for warm tones by adding too much blue, which can make your image look flat or give birds' feathers an unnatural hue. The typical result is a scene that appears either too cool or too warm, depending on the natural lighting you're shooting in. To correct this, switch to a white balance preset that matches your current lighting environment. Better yet, learn to use the Kelvin white balance setting and understand how the Kelvin scale works. Once you get comfortable with it, you'll be able to quickly dial in and perfect color temperature for any scene in which you're shooting. Okay, next up, JPEG versus RAW. Beginners often shoot in JPEG format, which limits your ability to fully edit and enhance your photos. JPEGs simply don't offer the same dynamic range as RAW files. Here's a quick sample photo I took right out in my backyard. For this test, I set my Canon R5 Mark II to capture both a JPEG and a CRAW file at the same time, so we can do a true side-by-side comparison between the two formats. These shots are straight out of the camera with no editing or post-processing. Right away, you can see there's quite a bit more detail in the CRAW file compared to the JPEG. After processing both images using the exact same settings, here's what they look like side by side. Both are cropped to a 4:5 aspect ratio. Now I'm not sure how clearly YouTube's compression will show it, but the CRAW image definitely holds more detail and richer color overall. So why not take advantage of the extra flexibility and quality that comes with shooting in CRAW, instead of settling for the limitations of JPEG? And this next one's a big one. Over-editing images. Beginners often tend to over-edit their photos. When I first started out, I loved cranking up the clarity and saturation sliders, but too much saturation, sharpening, or contrast can quickly make an image look unnatural. Instead, take a more subtle approach. Aim to capture your photo as close to finished as possible in camera so you'll have less editing to do later. When you start processing your photo, begin by adjusting the white balance, then apply noise reduction if needed. After that, fine-tune the exposure and crop your image for composition. In most cases, less is more. Keeping your edits light helps preserve the natural look and feel of the scene as you experienced it in the field. Okay, so here's the bonus tip I told you about at the start. The number one biggest beginner mistake isn't about the camera, it's about the approach. Too many photographers rely solely on the fancy cameras and the lenses and don't think of strategy. Learn the bird's habits, move slowly, and use natural cover. The best shots happen when your subject's comfortable in its environment and not surprised when you suddenly make a noisy appearance. A quiet, patient photographer gets way more intimate, detailed images than somebody chasing the subject or randomly wandering around. So that's it, 7 common mistakes new bird photographers make and how to fix them. Remember, the camera doesn't make the photo, you do. If this helped you out, hit the like button and consider subscribing for more. Also, drop a comment if you have any tips related to these topics of your own. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.